Hey guys, this is the third devotional that I'm doing in the book of Leviticus, and it's really hard not to give away all the details in every devotional because the details just build and build and build for the book of Leviticus. So if you're keeping up one video at a time, and maybe you're reading through Leviticus with me as you do this, we won't hit every chapter, obviously, but I'm just hitting examples to help explain Leviticus throughout. If you're keeping up with me, you're noticing a trend in the first three chapters as as I've been noting in the videos. The first three chapters are all about voluntary sacrifices. This is a person's way, a believer's way of saying thank you to God. Uh, Equivalent to today, this is our way of singing a worship song when we're in our car just randomly. This is a random act of kindness that we do because the Lord's laid it on our heart. I mean, anything that we do out of the positivity of our walk with God, not because we have to, but because we want to. These sweet moments with the Lord where, we don't go to church because we have to, but we show up and we worship Him voluntarily, right? This is characterized, at least in seed form, in the book of Leviticus, chapters 1 through 3. But we're going to come across something super important today as we get to chapter 4. And I want you to read chapter 4 with me, the entire thing. And we're going to find a major contrast here from the first three chapters. Chapter 4, verse 1, Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, If a person sins unintentionally in any of the things which the Lord has commanded not to be done, and commits any of them, if the anointed priest sins so as to bring guilt on the people, then let him offer to the Lord a bull without defect as a sin offering for the sin he has committed. Now, first of all, this is the first sacrifice in Leviticus that we really see as it pertains to sin. But something else that's interesting, in previous chapters, we know that the sacrifice is always spoken of first, and then the priest is spoken of second. Here, it really has to do with the people first and the sacrificer. It also has to do with the priest himself. So this is really interesting because what the Lord is trying to communicate in His word in Leviticus is that you and I are sinners. Yes, we need to bring our thanksgiving offerings to the Lord. But here in chapter 4, when a sin offering is being addressed, it's because the person themselves has to deal with the Lord. And what's shocking is if you had a priest who is supposed to act like a mediator or an intercessor in this culture, the assumption after the first three chapters is, oh yeah, well, he doesn't have issues with sin, so he's just helping his fellow comrades out so that he can offer sacrifices on their behalf. But the fact of the matter is that the priest has issues too. So whether you're a common person or whether you're a priest, it really doesn't matter. We're going to see in this chapter that all people are sinful. And again, this points us to asking the question, is there anybody who's not going to be sinful? Is there ever going to be a high priest who he himself will never sin at all? And you and I know that is Jesus Christ, who's our perfect high priest. Not only is the sacrificer, but he himself is the sacrifice. So again, the sacrifice comes first. Look at these instructions though in chapter 4, verse 4. He shall bring the bull on the doorway of the tent of meeting before the Lord, and he shall lay his hand on the head of the bull and slay the bull before the Lord. Then the anointed priest is to take some of the blood of the bull and bring it to the tent of meeting. And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times before the Lord. That number 7 often represents perfection. And then it says, in front of the veil of the sanctuary. Now, this picture of blood is going to come up often here in these sacrifices. Blood has to atone, or better said, blood has to cover our sin. Verse 7, the priest shall also put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense, which is before the Lord and the tent of meeting. And all the blood of the bull he shall pour out on the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the doorway of the tent of meeting. He shall remove from it all the fat of the bull of the sin offering, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat which is on the entrails, and the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them, which is on the loins, and the lobe of the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys. Just as it is removed from the ox of the sacrifice of peace offerings, and the priest is to offer them up in smoke on the altar of burnt offering. But the hide of the bull and all its flesh with its head and its legs and its entrails and its refuse, that is, all the rest of the bull, he is to bring out to a clean place outside the camp where the ashes are poured out, and burn it on the wood with fire where the ashes are poured out. It shall be burned. There's this idea that the sacrifice should be completely consumed. There's nothing left of this sacrifice. It's fully consumed, or better, it's fully devoted unto God from the worshiper. It's also sacrificed on wood, which some would say is another foreshadowing of Jesus dying on the cross. He died on wood. But then something interesting, verse 13. Now if the whole congregation of Israel commits error, and the matter escapes the notice of the assembly, and they commit any of the things which the Lord has commanded not to be done, and they become guilty, when the sin which they have committed becomes known, then the assembly shall offer a bull of the herd for a sin offering and bring it before the tent of meeting. So not only if you're a regular person, not only if you're a priest, but also if the entire assembly sins, and they're to do this in front of the veil. Also, pick it up in verse 22, just for the sake of time. When a leader sins and unintentionally does any one of all the things which the Lord his God has commanded not to be done and becomes guilty, if his sin which he has committed is made known to him, he shall bring for his offering a goat and a male without defect. So now it's not just regular people, not just priests, not just the congregation, but any other type of leader. And then verse 26 says, when this atonement is given at the end of the verse, he will be forgiven. More on that to come in a moment. Verse 27, now if any one of the common people sins unintentionally. Now it's addressing maybe the lowest in their society, maybe the most poor, I guess you could say, at least from the societal picture. You don't just have the middle class, you don't just have the leaders, you just don't have, the priest, you don't just have the lower class, if you will. You're dealing with everybody. The Bible's saying if anyone sins, because all people are sinners, here's how you must deal with this. Again, verse 31, thus the priest shall make atonement for him, and he will be forgiven. All of the conditions of the sacrifice are in the verses that I skipped. But the basic idea that we need to understand is that the Lord is wanting to offer assurance. Why would the Lord want to offer assurance? Look in verses 32 to 35 with me as we close this video. But if he brings a lamb as his offering for a sin offering, he shall bring it, a female without defect. He shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slay it for a sin offering in the place where they lay the burnt offering. The priest is to take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and all the rest of its blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar. Then he shall remove all its fat, just as the fat of the lamb is removed from the sacrifice of the peace offerings, and the priest shall offer them up in smoke on the altar, on the offerings by fire to the Lord. Thus the priest shall make atonement for him in regard to his sin which he has committed, and he will be forgiven. A lot of these similarities are also found in chapter 5. Why would God want to give Israel assurance? I want you to think about this. All of the gods of the ancient Near East, they were very capricious. They were very fickle. Supposedly, they only cared about you on a conditional basis. Maybe on their best day, people could have seen the gods of the ancient Near East as good. Maybe they could have seen them as good, but they could have never seen these other gods, as loving. And by the way, if you worshipped one god, lowercase g, then how do you know that doesn't make this other lowercase g god over here jealous? So you would essentially be pitted against the gods who would be jealous over your sacrifices, and now you'd be endangered to another god because you decided to serve some other god. I know this is super confusing, but the basic idea is that the gods of the ancient Near East were just as fickle and just as sinful in their character and behavior as mankind was. But when we're dealing with the God of heaven, who it does not possess the evil character qualities of man, and he's not fickle, and he doesn't love conditionally. In fact, he's entirely good, and he in his essence is love. Here it is. Because we're worshiping this God wants us to have assurance. He wants us to know that all sins are forgiven. He's trying to tell us you don't have to worry about all of these other gods and all these other sacrifices with arbitrary or random laws according to them. When you follow my laws, they're very specific, they're very detailed, so that you may know the truth. And when you know the truth will set you free. As you know the truth, you will know me. In other words, God is just saying, I want you to have absolute assurance that you can be in fellowship with me. And here is detail by detail as to how you may follow through with that. Hey, the God of heaven wants our deep fellowship. He's not like any of the other gods. He's a God who wants to know us, and that's exactly what Leviticus is seeking to say. God bless you guys. Love you. Hope you're enjoying these devotionals in Leviticus. Have a good day.